are filtering in, I will just keep reminding you that we are recording and broadcasting this town hall now. We do see the attendees flowing in, and when that rate slows down, we'll go ahead and introduce folks. All right, lots of good interest for this Research Restart Town Hall. It looks like attendees are starting to slow, so we can go ahead and start with some introductions. Just as a reminder to everyone, this town hall is being recorded and it is also being live streamed currently. We will make all of those things available later. I will say this again, but for attendees, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A button in the bottom center of your Zoom call, and we will get those questions to you. I do see we have a decent number of people dialing in from phone calls, so we will also read those questions out for people who won't be able to see them in the chat box. So welcome everyone. I'm Jillian Hayes, Dean of Grad Division. And I am so excited to co-host this town hall on our Research Restart with our grad students and our postdocs here on campus with Vice Chancellor Pramod from Office of Research. And we'll do some very quick introductions here and then get to the question and answer. So thank you, first of all, to the panelists. In addition to our Vice Chancellor for Research, we also have Chair of Grad Council, Carol Cerrone, Bruce Morgan, who is also from Office of Research, Jeff Barrett, our incoming Academic Senate Chair, and Jim Steintrager, our soon-to-be outgoing Academic Senate Chair. Lorelei Tangi from the libraries, Lee Bardwell on the Academic Senate, who's the chair of Corkle, and Zara Syed from the International Center, who was a late add to this panel. Thank you, Zara, for joining us. She's only able to stay briefly because the topic of this town hall is officially the Research Restart, but given the ICE rulings this week, we thought we might like to have Zara here to at least say a few words to everyone before we switch gears back into the Research Restart. So again, welcome to everyone. Please ask your questions in the Q&A, and we will make sure that all of those questions get answered. So I just want to remind everyone quickly that we are sort of in a minimal restart phase right now. And the Vice Chancellor for Research is going to remind everyone sort of some more details about that. But because we may open more or we may close more, and we don't really know what direction things are going to take, I just want to reassure all of our grad students and postdocs that we are watching that very closely and watching the impacts that this may be having on your careers, and we'll continue to address additional support that you may need as we can through a variety of mechanisms. So please know that we are watching this very closely. This is also the first of some monthly town halls for our continuing students and postdocs that we are starting as of today. So just want to make sure everyone knows that more is coming. We know there's a lot of concerns about international students right now, and I want to reassure you that plans will be disseminated by the end of today to department chairs and other members of the faculty, and we are very confident in our approach, and we're very confident that we can simultaneously comply with the law and ensure that our graduate students will be able to stay learning and working with us and contributing to our community throughout this order. So the reassurance there. And from a Research Restart standpoint, I just want to make sure that you all know this wonderful group of people is here assembled because they are all working for all disciplines to make sure that your research is as minimally impacted as possible. So with that, I'm going to pass it over first to Zara because she is actually meant to be somewhere else right now, but came to join us for a few minutes just to say some words for those of you concerned about international immigration issues.
Thank you so much, Jillian. And I wish I could have stayed much longer and learned some things myself. As Jillian very eloquently said, we are all working together, and we understand the information about visas. We're looking at them very carefully, but do know that our office is working with everyone that is involved to try to make this as smooth as possible, given our compliance. That's the first part for the campus, and then our advocacy for our students. That's really the main thing, is we want to be able to advocate for our students. And please note that it's gone beyond UCI, and I'm sure Jillian will have more to say about that. That's really the main function, is all of us wanting to support our students. And then the second part is the more difficult piece of how these, new regulations that just came out on Monday, how do we work through that? And please note that our office is working through that with the right, offices. And if there's any particular question that you have just about immigration, please reach out either to myself or to our office, and we can see how we can assist you. We really do want to welcome students into the fall, and however we can make that happen. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Really glad to have you here. I'm going to turn it over to Pramod to talk a bit about Research Restart. There are a couple of questions that came in on international while Sarah was speaking, and I just want to address those super quickly as we pass over. As far as international students in your I-20s, the International Center is on it. So just please be on the lookout for what they're going to need to do in the event that they need to reissue, in some cases, what you have. And as far as an impact study, for those of you who haven't heard already, the UC is suing. We filed today, and we have done a bunch of work on how much impact this is having on the universities around America and so on. So thank you for those questions. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Pramod to tell us a bit about where we're at with research.
Thank you. Thank you, Jillian, and good afternoon, everybody. Let me just recap where we are on research. So you might remember that in late March, on the orders of Governor Newsom and also Orange County health authorities, we had to very rapidly ramp research down to what we called essential research. And there is a formal definition of essential research, but it was very, very minimal level of research activity on campus. And that was in response to the governor's orders. Pretty much starting in middle to late April, we started to work on a plan to bring research back up on campus when conditions would allow. And on June 8th, working with Orange County health authorities, we were authorized to go back to what we are calling phase 2 of research. There are guiding principles that are defining what phase 2 research is. First and foremost, it is the health of everybody, students, staff, faculty, and our community that we live in is paramount. So we don't want to do anything that would risk the health of this entire community. That's number one. We also want to be maintaining a relatively low level of occupancy on campus. So rough guidance is about 30% of normal operation is what we are saying. Third, we are saying, if you can do your work without having to come to campus, please continue to do that. I mean, if there is no real reason for you to be using campus facilities, it's best that you don't do it. And so that what that means in reality is those who need to use labs and equipment and instrument and spaces and facilities on campus are the ones who are being asked to do so. So what we did from Office of Research, my office, is we issued general principles, guidance documents, check sheets, and forms that people had to fill in order to be authorized to do phase 2 research on campus. The authorization itself was done at the level of schools and research centers that have their own physical buildings. So for most of you, those would be the school that you are part of. And so if you're a grad student, sort of the best person to guide your phase 2 research ramp up would be your advisor. So please work with your faculty advisor to think about how you can get your research back up in phase 2, working with your faculty advisor, because they can, in their planning, we have asked them to include graduate students and postdocs. One of the things that you all should know is, in terms of priorities, we gave a very clear signal that early career researchers need to be given the highest priority in phase 2. And the definition of early career researchers are assistant professors on tenure track, finishing PhD students and postdocs. So what I think this audience needs to know is that you have been given high priority in terms of principles that we have articulated to the deans and center directors in terms of who should be given priority for phase two research. Couple other points. We have been in phase two for roughly a month now, and I would say things have gone well. Environment, health, and safety is doing spot checks, and the spot checks across campus are yielding, I would say, very good results, that people are adhering to all the standard operating procedures, the hygiene, the hand washing, the social distancing, face coverings. I mean, there is a whole bunch of regulations that we are asking people to comply with, and that compliance is going very well from what we can say, what we can see from the spot checks that are being done. Nevertheless, some people don't quite obey everything, and we are in some cases giving warnings and telling people that if this behavior continues, we may withdraw the approval. I regard phase two research authorization as a privilege that we are giving people, that it's okay, even with this pandemic, we are allowing you to come back to campus and conduct your research. But if you don't follow the best practices and public health guidance, we may have to withdraw. And I think I want you all to know that we are taking it very, very seriously. Couple final points, Jillian, before I turn it back. I must say that I'm very worried about the situation in Orange County. The numbers are not looking good at all for us. The case count is going up, hospitalization is going up, ICU occupancy is going up. What that means to me are two things. One, we must redouble our commitment to public health guidance and everything that I said, face covering, social distancing, all of these things, we have to redouble our commitment that we're going to follow all those things and minimize the risk to ourselves, to our colleagues, and to our communities. So that's number one. Number two is, we said all along when we went to phase two that we may have to pull back. If things get worse, we may have to pull back. Now, I cannot tell you that today I have metrics by which we will decide when to go back, but we are watching very carefully. We are involved in a lot of discussions as to what would cause us to pull back from phase two closer to phase one, essential research. We will certainly rely on what the governor's guidance is. We will certainly rely on what the county guidance is, but we are also going to rely on our own measurements and our own assessment of the level of risk to campus. So with that, Jillian, happy to answer any questions, but this is where we are in Research Restart.
Thank you, Pramod. We do have a lot of questions. I'm going to let those keep rolling in, and in the meantime, hand it over to Bruce Morgan, who can give us some more implementation details on some of the high-level strokes that Pramod just shared with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bruce Morgan. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Research Administration in the Office of Research. And one of my current duties is working with the Campus Recovery Implementation Team, also known as CRIT. And CRIT is a group of administrators from across the campus that have come together to help coordinate the very gradual, careful, measured reopening of the campus. We're engaged in a number of activities, and what you're probably most interested in right now is reopening plans. And we currently have 7 plans in front of us, 5 of them which were submitted just yesterday. So the workload is picking up for us, and we are trying to get through those plans just as quickly as possible. We assigned subgroup leaders to those plans today to start those reviews. So the plans that we've received so far do include a number of units, including applied innovations, libraries, athletics, the School of Law, Anteater Express, and a few other units that I know are important to everyone. CRIT is working very carefully and closely with the Strategic Advisory Group, also known as SAG, That's the decision-making group here at UCI. And Dr. Khargonekar is a member of that committee. We are working on a number of other issues as well, including things, arrangements related to parking, travel, gatherings on campus, student training for returning to campus, a number of other issues, as well as working on developing some executive directives for the Chancellor's consideration. And so I'll turn it back to you, Jillian.
Thank you for that, Bruce. And I'm already seeing questions come in, no surprise, from folks about the opening of the libraries. So with that, why don't we get a quick overview from our university librarian?
Thank you, Jillian. I'm pleased to be on this panel. The support of graduate research is a very high priority for us. And so let me share where we are, and I'll be able to share some good news as part of this presentation. Right now, as you know, our buildings are closed, but our services are still available. And so we're working remotely to provide access to library collections. We've increased the numbers of e-journals, e-books, and streaming media on various platforms. We encourage you to reach out to your subject librarians, because we know that everyone's research topic is very individual and specific. And so rather than one blanket answer, we encourage you to work with them so that we can ensure that you get access to the research materials that you need. We also offer a 24/7 reference web chat service as well. As part of the research revamp, a restart, we recently submitted a proposal to CRIT, as Bruce mentioned, and I'm very pleased to say that our proposal to have our staff, some of our staff, come back into the library building to offer a paging service where you can submit requests for physical books to be picked up has been approved by both the campus and the Orange County Public Health. And the way this will work is that starting July 27th, you'll be able to submit your requests by going into our online catalog called Library Search. And when you sign into that, you'll be able to do a request for that item so that you don't have to key anything in. You can actually just click and it will capture the information. And then starting August 3rd, you'll be able to pick up these books. And there will be two locations. One will be the front door of Langston Library, and the other will be a curbside service in lot 2, which is a parking lot that's closest to Langston Library. And let me clarify that it's our central, those two are our central points. You can actually request materials from the science library as well, but just to kind of make things simpler, all the pickup will occur at those two locations, the front door or the curbside. I should mention also that currently we have access to the HathiTrust Emergency Temporary Access Service. And this was a project that many university libraries have been a part to, where we digitized books as part of a Google Books project. And we took the files and made them into the HathiTrust repository. Because of the COVID crisis, we have been able to turn on online access to thousands of these books in the UC system. And so in between the HathiTrust, the licensed materials, and now soon this availability to pick up physical items that aren't part of the HathiTrust, we hope that that will meet a large part of your needs. In addition to the paging, if there are requests for materials that cannot circulate, we may also be able to do a scanning service. And so that may be able to address potentially if you have needs for materials like a chapter and book instead of the entire book, or if there's a manuscript in the archives. I saw that was one of the questions in the chat. So we are sending out a Zot mail that describes all of this. Will link to our website where all of the instructions and details will be shared. And I just want to thank Bruce, Morgan, and the rest of CRIT and Pramod and Hal for all the support, because to be able to offer this service is something I think that will meet your needs. Eventually, later down the line, we hope to open up some of our study spaces, but that will be for a next phase. And I'll turn it back to you, Jillian.
Thank you for that. So that actually flows very well over to Lee Bardwell, who is the chair of the Academic Senate Committee that focuses on both research and libraries.
Hi, thanks, Jillian. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's the Council on Research, Computing, and Libraries, and I don't have much to say to you, but I'm here to listen and to hear what student concerns are so that we can do a better job of dealing with them from the research side. I would like to say that the Academic Senate, system-wide and here at UCI, strongly condemns the xenophobic limitations imposed on the Student Exchange Visitors Program by ICE and the State Department. And this is, I'm sort of reading from a statement written by Kumkum Babani, who's the chair of the Academic Council. She further goes on to say that we note the cynicism of this latest action. There is no educational or economic reason to force international students who wish to have access to their campuses to leave the country. It is difficult to see this as anything more than an effort by the Trump administration to pressure colleges and universities into the appearance of normality at the risk of the safety of their communities. Targeting a group with no political leverage reveals the indifference to the human disruption caused by this policy. So myself, as well as Jim and Jeff, the members of the academic, and Carol, all the members of the Academic Senate who are here today, just want students to know that we are angry and action is being taken, as Jillian said. The UC is now involved in this lawsuit to make this stop. As many of you know, the UC was the primary litigant in the successful lawsuit that just was heard at the Supreme Court last week that that stopped the Trump administration's effort to preemptively end DACA. So we have good lawyers at the UC system-wide who are going to fight this battle for you. Lorelei, there was, I'm just noticing a couple questions here. Will microphones be available at the library?
Microphones, that's such a good question. I think we're going to have to take it on a case-by-case basis. For example, if there's a specific article, I think we should be able to scan it and deliver it. But if it's a sort of thing where you need the entire reel to scan and browse, that might be a little tricky at this point because there isn't going to be a microfilm viewer available for you at this point. So I think it's one of those things, if you don't mind just contacting your subject librarian and then explaining what it is you need. And we may in fact be able to find alternative means as well. One of the things that we have been doing even right now before this curbside and front door service has been available is finding out if, for example, if the microfilm is available electronically and whether or not we can be able to turn that on or not. And so it takes a little bit of investigation for each of the types of materials that people are interested in.
Someone else is asking about newspaper, the microfilms of the newspaper articles. Are those going to be available?
Right. I think similarly, I think one of the things we're trying to do is as people request things that are difficult to see physically, we're investigating whether there's an online equivalent and whether we can turn that on instead as a better source for you to be able to access. And we won't know until we look at the specific information that you have.
Thank you. And so I'd like to go ahead and hear from Carol Saron, the chair of the Grad Council, the Academic Senate Committee that deals with graduate students.
Hello there. As Jillian said, my name is Carol Saron, and I've been working as chair of Grad Council for the last year. So we're working very closely with Jillian on the various issues that have come up since the shutdown and before, around issues related to normative time to degree, funding, all sorts of questions that you have raised with her have come back to Grad Council, and we've worked collaboratively to try and make sure that the transition to this new situation was as smooth as possible. I want to just add that we recognize that this has been an extraordinarily difficult time, and in particular for graduate students who are are in the process of getting ready to launch a new career. So we're very cognizant of the particular challenges that you've had to confront.
Thank you, Carol. And last, but certainly not least by any stretch of the imagination, we'd love to hear from both Jim Steintrager, our current Academic Senate Chair, as well as Jeff Barrett, the incoming, and maybe we'll go in that order as it is temporally logical.
Thank you, Jillian. In a lot of ways, the Academic Senate is here today to listen to your concerns and questions so we can better address them and work with the administration. As others I believe have mentioned, the Senate is the faculty arm and indeed body of shared governance. And one of the things that I'm very cognizant of as chair of the Senate is that we represent faculty from across the broad spectrum of disciplines on campus. And that, of course, includes a broad spectrum of disciplines in which graduate student researchers are involved. And I'm very aware that there is lab research. There's research as a professor of English with a historical bent. I'm very aware that there's research that takes place in archives and requires libraries. But I'm also aware that there are other sorts of research that take place across campus. So one of the things that I would be interested in seeing in the question box is hearing from those of you who are involved in other sorts of research and the kinds of questions and concerns that you have. Jeff?
Yeah, so it's a pleasure being here. Jim is the current chair of the Academic Senate, and then I'm stepping in. So to a large extent, I'm along as a shadow for a while to learn how this works, and we carried the handoff through this at the end of the summer. One of the things that I've been watching as we've been discussing the topics here is the questions that have been coming in. One of the things that the Academic Senate does is serve as an advocate for faculty and student interests on campus. And a number of the questions that have shown up in connection with our meeting today are on topics that we've been considering, but not in quite the way that the question is being posed. And so this is useful to us. The main group that is responsible for policy right now and advisement to the administration is the Strategic Advisement Group, SAG. And this group was organized for the purpose of trying to get a handle on all of the details that are involved in our response to the pandemic. And so some of the issues that have come up already in this meeting that have been raised in questions, we haven't fully gotten our heads around yet. And we will be taking those issues back to the campus and trying to get a good sense of how best to move forward on those.
Thank you, everyone. So with those introductions, we will turn to the Q&A a little bit. I've been trying to answer the non-research focused questions as quickly as I can in the chat, because as a reminder, I know it is hot on everyone's minds to be thinking about our immigration orders right now, and there will be a 2 webinars in the next 2 weeks focused on immigration and global affairs, specifically put on by the Office of Global Engagement. So we do want to the degree that we can, prioritize answering the research focused questions here. So I'm trying to answer the other questions as fast as I can in the typing. But now I'd like to return to, probably these are best answered by Pramod and Bruce. So some questions about one that's getting a lot of upvoting. So a lot of people are interested in the answer to this. As vaccines and tests become available, will UCI Health be able to support prioritizing our constituents and so on, and any information you have about that?
So let me provide a perspective on that question. The vaccine is a little bit further away, but the testing is here and will continue to evolve. What all of you should know is that there is a UC-wide task force chartered by University President Napolitano, and is led by UC Vice President Carrie Byington on testing and contact tracing and that whole host of issues around testing. That task force has been meeting twice a week or even maybe more frequent than that. Our Vice Chancellor for Health Affairs, Steve Goldstein, is in that task force, and there are some others from UCI on that task force. And they are supposed to be issuing a guidance document to campuses, to chancellors of all UC campuses on the testing strategies and contact tracing strategies. So we certainly are going to be following the best advice we are going to get from that UC-wide task force. Having said that, UC Irvine we are lucky that we have a first-rate medical center and UCI Health, and they certainly have capacity for testing, and they will. I can't say what the plans are, but they certainly are thinking about increasing the capacity for testing as appropriate and needed. So once we get the UC guidance and UCI Health leadership looks at the guidance and figures out how to do the testing, we certainly will be able to do the required and appropriate testing of UCI community, which includes faculty, staff, and students. Just so that you know, at this moment, a test is ordered by a physician who has the authority to order a test. And if the test is positive, that's a reportable incident to Orange County Health. So at this moment, there is a very streamlined procedure for how the testing gets done and how the results are handled by Orange County Health, and then they carry out the contact tracing. And that would change potentially depending on what the UC-wide task force comes back with in terms of greater levels of testing on campus. But that's the current state, Jillian. I hope that provides perspective and where we stand.
Yeah, there are several questions in the chat about testing. All I can tell you is this: I'm on calls with the other grad deans at the other UCs a lot. And we all seem to think that all the other UCs are doing things better than we are, and they all think that we're doing it better than they are. And everyone is sort of hearing rumors and so on and so forth. But we are all working together. So if another campus is successful in finding a testing regimen that works, we will certainly adopt it, is sort of my understanding. Does anyone want to add anything to that response? No, great. So a secondary kind of related question that's coming in is about offsite in-person research. And I know, Pramod, you've been fielding a lot of those questions by email as well. So anything you can speak to in that regard?
So let me begin by saying that on our research ramp up website, so there is a website that we have created, an Office of Research, that has all the information that you need in a single place. And maybe Bruce or I can put the link in the Q&A box. We have issued specific guidance on offsite research. So that's where I would recommend you go. If you are doing offsite research, that's the place to go and see what the guidance is and what the applicable rules are. as a matter of principle, basically what it is you follow UCI policies and or policies where you are located. So if the location is wherever it is, and they have policies on how to conduct safe, conduct research in a way that obeys public health guidance, you follow the policies at the location where you are going to be. Again, work with your faculty advisor to create a plan that gets approved by your school, and then you can conduct offsite research in a way that's permissible. Bruce, you want to add anything to what I said?
I just sent the link to Jillian via chat function. So hopefully
just put that link for offsite research. I think that might address questions.
We will figure out how to get that link out to you all. I'm not quite sure how to get it from a private thing. Bruce, maybe can you send it to the UCI media account so that they have it and they can attach it to the materials?
Sure.
Thank you.
Jillian, can I just add one thing to that?
Sure.
Because currently there are also very strict restrictions on travel and research-related travel, and that will obviously impact some sorts of offsite research, not necessarily offsite research that is taking place more locally. And my understanding is that the travel for research situation is currently being analyzed. We have to follow the restrictions that are handed down by the Office of the President on this, along with other authorities. But this is sort of a work in progress, or it's an evolution. I don't know if Pramod wants to add anything.
Yeah, I think Jim, that's good. You know, I forgot to mention travel. I mean, travel is a big part of this puzzle, and there was travel guidance that was valid up to June 30th, if I remember right. And currently, the CRIT group that Bruce is on is developing a new travel guidance that is still work in progress. At some point, it will be in good enough shape that we can issue the travel guidance, but it will constrain how much offsite work can be done. What makes it worse is currently California and the US are actually hotbeds of coronavirus. So if you think of overseas travel in Europe, for example, it's hard for US travelers to go to Europe. So I think the situation, like I mentioned earlier in my comments, in Orange County situation is not that good. US situation is not that good. And so that is also going to put some constraints on offsite research. But having said that, we have policy that if you can follow and take advantage of our policy, you should go ahead. I mean, maybe you can drive in a way that is safe and you can conduct your research. I mean, I think there are ways in which it could be done.
Yes, as long as you don't have to cross an ocean, there are many ways that you can get to lots of places and get the work done.
Exactly. I would just add that on the research continuity website, we do have guidance for offsite research activities that I encourage everyone to take a look at.
And one thing I will add that Carol may also want to comment on is, we're getting a lot of questions from both students and faculty about international research. And I don't have good news for you on this, right? These are far, far out of our control. Many countries have bans on Americans coming to them, and we have no end date for that. So as frustrating and horrible as it may be, I would strongly suggest to people who are dependent upon being on site in an international research context to talk to your thesis advisor about finding a different approach, either doing remote interviews if you're an empiricist, or finding ways to get someone to scan information if you need to go into the archives, or changing your research questions to not require that. And I know that's not what anyone wants to hear, but realistically, we have no end in sight on when you may be able to travel to other countries. So Carol, do you want to say anything else there?
No, I think you've pretty much touched on it, I guess, and summed it up, which is, I know, very disheartening. I guess, Lorelei, for this people who need our archives, is there any arrangements that might be worked out through the libraries, through the UC libraries, for special collections, or is that just not feasible at this point. I mean, that would be one way to work through the library, I would imagine, if there's any possibility.
Right. So I'll say that every library is dealing with reopening, and we're all opening at different times. So there will be delays, just constraints, because if their staff, their library staff, are not allowed to go into the building as ours are currently until mid-July, there's no way that they can actually physically get access to archival materials and scan it or share it. But I think over time, what you're going to see, I'm going to take a guess, by fall, more and more of the archives will be open, or some of their staff may be able to go back into the buildings. And I think through our library networks, which are very strong, we'll be able to do the kind of resource sharing that you see. There's definitely going to have to be more scan on demand, and really being able to make decisions as to what's possible in terms of delivering online. But I think this summer it's gonna be a phase, an incremental thing, right? Because we're all just in different phases and trying to get our operations opening again. So ask for your patience, but I would think that, in terms of the ability to request archival materials, we probably will be in much better shape by fall quarter. And I would just say, continue to submit your requests, because I think that helps us to know the types of information you need. Work with your subject librarians. Our special collections webpage has the ability for you to submit questions and requests, even if we're not able to meet those needs immediately. At least they're in the queue, and we can do a lot of the reaching out to other archives for you, or try to work with you to see if those things are possible, because we know it's not just our archive. You're looking at archives globally, right? So it's going to take some time.
So Jillian, if I can just add one point, and that, as Lorelei was speaking, I was thinking, I come from criminology, law, and society, and there are often instances where our graduate students have had to change course. They can't get into a prison. They can't, it happens in the research process a lot. So I would urge you, if you're facing that challenge, to consult with your advisor and your peers. For all you know, he or she has had to make changes in the past and can really provide guidance for reshaping a project. It's kind of hitting a smack in the face right now, but it's not an unusual event in a lot of areas of research. You can't gain access, you're denied access, you get in, you get thrown out. So I would just urge you to really work with your advisor. And it may in some instances entail shifting advisors, I realize, but that's just another piece of advice. I hope it's helpful.
Thank you, Carol. And of course, should you need to reconstitute a committee or other kinds of things that require waivers from grad division, we are of course being flexible in those kinds of things as you need them. I will echo the same thing Carol just said about sort of fieldwork related things. We have a question about students who are in a high risk category and so need to remain at home until phase 4. Obviously, your health is of the utmost priority. We recognize that shifting your questions to something maybe more theoretical or that doesn't require in-person interaction may not be possible for everyone, but for those who it is, please take Carol's advice to hand and we'll work with you. If it's absolutely not possible, this is why we have sort of case-by-case ability to address things like research timelines and funding and so on, is that we are really reserving those extra accommodations, if you will, not in the legal sense of accommodations, but support for those students who truly cannot change their research questions, truly cannot find another way to do the work that they're doing, and need our extra help. So just know that that is why we're handling things as we are, is to try to really get the support out to those who truly need it. And of course, your health and safety need to come first. So please work with your advisor. And if you aren't able to get satisfaction there, work with your grad program chair. If you can't get it there, go to the Associate Dean for Research, and of course, Grad Division, Office of Research, Grad Council. All of these other folks on this call are also all here for you should things not work at those various levels. So Lorelei, I think I have an easy one for you. We've got a question about whether the late fees will continue to be sort of flexible, or maybe not late fees, but deadlines, if you will, for returning materials.
Right. So I actually copied and pasted a rather detailed response. If you go under Q&A and look under the answered questions.
Great.
There. So we are extending the due dates till September 30th, but there's a little bit more information there. So I think it's best if you go there, and if you're not able to access that, our library's website has that answer too under COVID-19 services.
Great, thank you. And I think you've already answered this, but if we could just double check, manuscripts and hard copies that people would like. I know you're doing some good work there. If you want to say anything else or just remind us very quickly the answer to that.
Sure. So the archives isn't open. And so until we're able to have our staff actually allowed back into the building, which we hope will be in mid-July, the kind of service we're able to offer at that point will be more scanning. In a later phase, what we hope to do is, and that needs to get approved by the campus and Orange County Public Health, is the ability to actually open up our spaces to allow the public into our buildings, okay? And at that point, we will be able to have appointments. So I think in this current phase, you know, that I've been talking about in terms of paging services, we will be able to do some scanning. It will depend on the physical item and the archive. So submit your request. We hope we can address it, but it will depend a lot about the condition of the material, the amount that you need, et cetera, and also copyrights.
Great, thank you. I'm hoping this is a quick and easy question, although I'm not sure which of my panelists is the right to answer it. Who is overseeing animals who are being used in research right now?
I can answer that. So we have, as part of Office of Research, a unit called ULAR, University Laboratory Animal Research. They manage use of animals in research all across campus. So that's the unit that directly deals with this problem, and they report directly to me. And so it's them. And then of course, within the schools, there are faculty members and staff who deal with animals, but those are the two areas where we make sure that animals are appropriately treated in research. Let me say that we take this very, very seriously. So when we went down to ramp down to essential research, one of our guiding principles was that if you stop that research, it would cause harm to animals. That was exempted from shutdown. So throughout this process, we have done our very, very best to treat animals in a humane way, follow all the applicable federal and local and state laws. And let me just add one more word on this. We are audited regularly by NIH. They come here unannounced to look at how we are treating our animals. And every time we get the highest review. I mean, I want to assure people on this call that you can be proud of how UCI is dealing with animals in our research enterprise. Bruce, do you want to add anything to what I said?
No, I think you've covered it. I would just only add that the USDA also audits us, and the same result is true. We get glowing reviews.
Thank you. That is wonderful news. This question is my favorite because it's addressed to Jim, who is wonderful and an expert in the Marquis de Sade, but probably not the person to answer something about PPE. So I'm going to redirect the question back to Pramod and Bruce, who is asking about in labs where we're being very, very tight right now and only allowing them one person in at a time, is there a model in which appropriate PPE could be requisitioned to allow more people to work simultaneously?
I think we would ask you to work with EH&S. They are the ones handling all the PPE acquisition and distribution to units. I think there could be exceptional situations where we can allow for greater density with higher levels of protective equipment. It does happen on the medical side to some extent, but it would be more of an exception than the rule, just because there are limited supplies available and we just need to conserve them for healthcare workers, for example. So let's just be mindful of what's happening 15 miles from here, where there are worries about ICUs overflowing with patients. So having said that, I mean, I don't want to rule it out. I think you should work with your assistant dean or associate dean in your school and EHS and see if there is a way to take care of that particular situation.
Thank you.
I would just recommend, sorry, Jillian, I would just recommend that graduate students first talk to their mentors, the faculty members who are the principal investigators of the labs, and see if that's something that the principal investigator feels is appropriate, and then advance that to the assistant deans.
Thank you for that. I'm going to hope that between Lee and Carol, they might know the answer to this question, because I do not. And if we don't know the answer, I promise we'll find it out. But in the fields in which incoming graduate students have rotations in their first year, do we have a sense of what those might look like? And I assume they're different from program to program.
You want me to take that one, Carol?
Please.
So I think this is a question for grad students in STEM, because that's a particular area where we do a lot of research rotations. And that's an excellent question. And I'm not sure what we're even going to be doing in my own department. Typically, a rotation in a wet lab would require some training, and that requires some close work where you look over somebody's shoulder as you're learning these new techniques. So definitely that's going to require mask wearing and probably more than that. There are labs running now where people are doing biology, physics, chemistry research. Multiple people are working in the same space. They're just keeping 6 feet distance. They're wearing masks. And I imagine that a wet lab rotation will be like that. The only part that I'm not sure how that's going to work out now is if you have to look over someone's shoulder to either see what they're doing, or they're looking over your shoulder to make sure you're doing it correctly. How is that going to work? So I'm afraid I can't completely answer the question, but I'm going to look into it. I'm going to, as soon as I get off this meeting, I'm going to talk to a dean of graduate studies in biosci and see what he's thinking, because I think it's an excellent question.
Yes, so thank you for that question, and we will work on it and hope to get guidance out as quickly as we can to the incoming students regarding those adaptations that we might do. So thank you for that. Another one, Lee, you turned off your mute too quickly. I assume that this goes to you, but maybe it's to Bruce. Support for computing resources, in particular the HPC. Will this continue regardless of what phase of research restart we are in?
And I can answer that, Jillian. That answer is absolutely yes. In one of the units that we prioritized was research computing, RCIC, and we expect to make high performance computing available to the highest level possible on this campus. Because I think that's one way we can reduce the need to be on campus, is if high performance computing is working well from remote.
Great, thanks.
So the answer to that is absolutely yes.
And good news, while we were answering that question, Mike Mulligan, who's going to now be an honorary panelist, who is the Associate Dean in BioSci, has responded. And I'll just read that out to folks. Rotation students will be accommodated through the individual PI's approval for phase 2 research. All training should conform to social distancing and staggered schedules. So it sounds like, at least in BioSci, we've got a plan in place, and we will now borrow that plan and propagate it through the other schools who have rotations. So thank you very much to Mike for weighing in quickly with that response in the chat.
Jillian, there was one question I want to answer before we run out of time. It's 2:55. And that was from some student, I think, who is in maybe social sciences or in a non-STEM school. And the question was, are they being disadvantaged? And I just want to address that the answer is absolutely not. The guidance that we have put out are really field independent. And students in social science, social ecology, humanities should work with their faculty advisors and the associate deans to see if their work can be approved, and they can get started on increasing their research. So please do not think that any of our guidance is weighted towards STEM disciplines. That's not.
Can I just interject and ask, because one of the things that came up in grad council were the challenges facing students who are getting MFAs and the performance students. Can you just speak to that as well?
I mean, we certainly consulted the Dean of School of Arts, Stephen Barker, when we issued the guidance memo, and he thought that School of Arts could operate under that guidance memo. So I cannot speak in more detail than that. I think it would be, if there is a specific issue, I would be happy to get involved and work with Dean Barker and whoever else needs to work on it to see what can be done. But when we crafted that language, and Jim and Jeff and Lee, they all saw it, and we consulted the deans, humanities, arts, social sciences, social ecology, just to make sure that they could use that guidance to do phase 2 increase.
So we are closing up on 3 o'clock. I want to end with quickly a reminder that you can please always reach out for the graduate students and postdocs that are on this call. You can always come. I have office hours every day, Monday through Friday, and ask me any specific questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you. So please don't be shy with those questions. We do have a consistent theme in some of the emails I get, as well as a question that just came in that I think is really important that we hear from both Jim and Jeff about as the people responsible for faculty, is what happens if a PhD student or a postdoc has to say no to something because it's unsafe for them or whatever reason? What is the commitment of the university to protect them? So if I could just end on that note, that would be wonderful.
Well, so that my understanding is the commitment of the university is sort of absolute on this front, that the graduate students and undergraduates would be able to say to a faculty member with whom they're working, I can't come in, and that would be sort of the end of the story, and that there would be no retaliation. And we have worked on messaging to this effect on the undergraduate side and on the graduate side. So all faculty should certainly know about this. And students that might be impacted should also know that there are channels where they can report any issues that they've had in this regard.
Yeah, this goes back to a theme that's come up multiple times as we've been discussing these issues today, and that is the health of the members of our community is absolutely of paramount importance, and we can't take chances with that. And we're part of a community. We need to be taking care of each other.
Thank you. I know there are unanswered questions in the chat. Please don't be shy about dropping an email to any of us with any of those questions. We are always happy to answer them, or at least to redirect you to someone who knows the answer if we don't. I want to thank you again for giving up your valuable hour on a Friday afternoon to us, and remind you we are going to start doing these monthly on topics related to graduate students and postdocs, and we'll invite different wonderful guests like the ones we had today. So please let us know if there are any topics that you would particularly like to hear from for our next one next month. And thank you again to all of our wonderful panelists for joining us today. I know these are uncertain, tough times, particularly for our junior early career researchers, as you all are. Just please know that we are working on your behalf, not always as fast or in the ways that you would like, but we are trying and we are here for you. So please reach out. Thank you again to everyone.